The Srimad Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, verse 5. The Blessed Lord said, O Arjuna, many lives of mine have passed, and so have yours. I know them all, but you know not, O scorcher of enemies. That's Arjuna. We had dwelt a little on the doubt of Arjuna, that Sri Krishna makes the claim that, well, I have taught this yoga to the first divine born, and then he transmitted it down to his sons and disciples, and it became a long tradition. That, due to a long lapse of time, has now become encrusted with the faults of people. So I'm restating this ancient yoga once again because you are my friend and a devotee. So Arjuna asked, how come you taught this yoga to the firstborn at the time of creation? And this verse states the Lord's position. O Arjuna, many lives of mine have passed, and so have yours. I know them all, but you know not, O scorcher of the enemies. So Sri Bhagavan Vacha, Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tavacharjuna Tanyaham Veda Sarvani Natvam Veta Parantapa. Bahuni, many, Vyatitani have passed. Me Janmani, my births, Tava, as well as yours, O Arjuna. Many births have passed of mine as well as yours. The Lord knows. That's the difference between an incarnation and an ordinary soul, as they say, jiva. We are under the bondage of ignorance and we know not anything. It's not a question of knowing what was your previous birth or even the previous births. We don't know anything about ourselves. Even in the present birth, we hardly know anything. We know a few of our peculiarities, a few of our desires, a few of our emotions, a few of our wants, a few of our actions. And that's what we string out an identity based on this and say, this is me. That's not knowing oneself at all. So the Blessed Lord says, I know all of them, my births. And this also puts an end to the doctrine of one incarnation. There are many incarnations. If there is one incarnation, that incarnation will come repeatedly. So Shri Ramakrishna will say, he who had come as Rama and he who had come as Krishna is now come as Ramakrishna. How did he know? Well, he knew, according to this statement of the Gita, I know my births, you don't know yours. The question of birth and death has plagued humankind, or rather plagued our consciousness. What exactly is the secret of birth and what is the secret of death? In the Bhagavad Gita, in the second chapter, it said, Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityu dhruvam janma mritasya cha. That which dies will be reborn, and that which will be reborn will die. We are a long series, a very long series of experiences. And where are these experiences? These are the karmic experiences. We have on one level the memories, the impressions of the whole evolution written in our cell, in the biological cell. We need to stretch it out, unravel, and we'll know we have passed through many species. The whole thing has been kind of noted down there. There's another level where your entire experiences have been sort of recorded. Whatever you have experienced, good or bad or indifferent, all experiences are kind of curled up in the mind, in the subconsciousness. So we have various levels of memory. And there are many times, obviously, in this life, we have forgotten many things a few years back, or a few days back, or a few weeks back that we have done or said. We don't remember them. There is a kind of a covering, a kind of an, the knowledge is obscured. So we just can't penetrate deeply enough to know the sequence of all our experiences. We are ancient souls, ancient beings. We have traveled the higher and lower regions. We have experienced many things. And like Swami Vivekananda says, the whole of nature is to liberate you, working to liberate you, to experience nature and then get liberated. Bhoga and apavarga. Like Swami Vivekananda says, you are there and page after page of this nature is turning. Who changes? The book, nature. Nature takes you through various experiences. And after the book is over, you've done with all the experiences, you will become free. Shri Ramakrishna is saying, who can become a sannyasin, a monk? One who has finished all his human experiences, from the scavenger, from the lowest to the highest, to the emperor. Only that person can kind of dismiss every kind of attraction or repulsion or kind of, you can say, object that tries to distract a person. So there have been many births, and we know that this human birth is extremely rare. It's extremely precious. And having got this birth, one needs to strive to acquire spirituality. For people, life is meaningless. Life is meant for enjoyment. Life is this. What a life. Oh, what a life it is. So this human birth is extremely rare. It's extremely precious. And it's the best opportunity to realize God here. So having had this birth, which is the result of both the dharma and the adharma, the impressions of both the good and the bad, when they are balanced, that which fructifies and comes out as a kind of a balance between the virtue and vice impressions. one obtains a human body, when the impressions which are fructifying are more or less heinous, then we have kind of bodies lower and kind of hellish bodies. Nishiddham narakim tanum. When those impressions are kind of bad impressions, samskaras, they lead you down to lower and lower levels of existence. And when they are slightly better, higher, you get some superfine bodies of demigods or gods. So this is the whole universe of karma. It's a massive play of karma. And we have been circuiting this massive world of karma, experiencing things at every level. And sometimes foolishly we keep on repeating those same mistakes, repeating those. We have not at times learned from some of the experiences. And that's the reason why there is a kind of an maya and ignorance that covers all knowledge. Ajnanena vritam jnanam. Knowledge is covered by ignorance. Tena muhyanti jantava. And that's why beings are deluded thereby. So the Lord wants to put things into perspective. It is not a kind of an incongruity. It's not something that has come out of the past and claiming that, yes, I was there in the past and now I'm in the present. The Lord knows. And not only His own incarnations, his or her, of course. There's no gender there. But He knows the incarnation of each and every one of us. It's not only Arjuna. Oh, Arjuna, many lives of mine have passed and so have yours. No, it's not only Arjuna. It means all of us. When it means all of us, every being, it means that the Lord is omniscient. Because only that which is omniscient, all-knowing, can know this guy has come as so and so. In the case of Sri Ramakrishna, you find some of his disciples, they come to him and he looks at them and he's saying, he's speaking about the antecedents. He was born from the aspect of the goddess Radha. He was one of the great rishis and he was a great yogi in his previous birth. He was a disciple of Christ in his previous birth. Who knows? Sri Ramakrishna knows. And the very fact he is stating that, he knows. That's why I know all my incarnation, I know all your incarnation, because the Lord is omniscient. And we have a saying, no, God knows. Yeah, God actually knows. So, this repeated births and deaths, for many of us, life is meaningless, or life on the lower levels, without compunction, we kill off certain things and we destroy things, not really understanding the value of life, because we have not understood what is life. Once you understand what is life, life itself is a tremendous force. It is picking up materials here, building up a body, discarding it, picking up another body, materials, discarding it. It's a constant flow. And it's not only one or two or three hurricanes that are moving around like this, or tornadoes, picking up a body, discarding that material somewhere, and picking up something else. All of us. So in this massive, you can say, world of birth and rebirth, there is a being who knows the past, the present, and the future of everyone. That is a big, big consolation also for us. At least there's someone who's kind of conscious of what we are doing, knows what we are doing. We ourselves don't know what we are doing. Why have we come into this life? What are we supposed to attain? We hardly know anything of these things. Somebody is keeping tabs on us. It's a consolation. At the same time, it's also a fear. My God, there's someone who's observing all what I'm doing and I'm saying and I'm thinking. Exactly. The whole thing is not self-revelatory to you and to me, but it is to God. There it is. What happens in this case? When we know when somebody is observing you, we become self-conscious. And that self-conscious makes us controlled. We become careful in what we speak and what we do and what we think also. That's the idea. If you say, Lord, where's the Lord? People have been trying to stay kind of in a secretive way. People don't want interference in their life. They don't want any kind of nosy God pushing his knowledge into our affairs. So we discard God to some heaven. And what has God been doing? Oh, he's taking rest or whatever. Maybe he'll come a little later or whatever. No. So we want to live a nice, small, secretive life without any kind of hindrance, without any kind of, you can say, observer. So in Hinduism, we bring that God back inside here. Back where there's no question of wherever there's creation, wherever there are souls or jivas, there is Ishvara, God. You cannot separate the souls, individual souls, or nature and God. These three things are a composite. So we know. God knows. And thank God for that. So when he says many lives of, what happens is many times we feel a kind of a loneliness. We find of a purposelessness in life. Why is all this? What is the meaning and purpose of life? What is this? Nobody asks us questions. A person who's a slightly religious will never ask this question. No, what's that? What's the meaning and purpose of life? What kind of question is that? There is God here. There's God everywhere. And to see that God is the goal of life. So why should loneliness and meaninglessness come? Why should people feel frightened? Why should people abuse others? Why should people threaten others? Why should people take to violence and crime and genocide and hatred and anger? What's this? What are we doing? Once you understand that the whole play is a divine play, everything becomes straightened. Everything becomes clear. We understand that this goal of life is to see God. To see that the background of this universe, the background behind our own personalities, and that is what. So when he says many lives are, we have at times lived in vain. Many times we not only lived in vain, but sometimes we do things in vain. We think, we talk, and behave vainly. without any kind of, you can say, meaning behind that. So it is a kind of a reorientation. It is a kind of a higher purpose in life that is now opening up to us. We know that there is someone who cares, who loves. That is an ever active providence. As they say, who notes even the sparrow's fall. There it is. Sri Ramakrishna says, not even a leaf moves without God's will. Here, the whole place is nothing but suffused with this divinity. And we have been living these small lives, and that's the reason why we are blinded. And moreover, not only blinded, but we take others also and lead them, the blind leading the blind. Andena iva niyamana yatanda. And then they both fall into a ditch. As long as this divinity within us is not awakened, we are blind. We are blind not only to in order to see God, or to understand the world, and even to understand ourselves. So the next word, the next verse is, though I am birthless, undecaying by nature, and the Lord of beings, still, by subjugating my prakriti, my nature, I take birth by means of my own maya. Here is the Lord stating in very clear terms how an incarnation appears. I said appears. You see, though I am birthless, ajo api, son, undecaying by nature, avyayatma, and bhutanam, Ishvara, and the Lord of all beings, the ruler of all beings, Isha. Prakritim swam adhisthaya, by controlling nature, this nature. I am born Sambhavami by my own Maya. Now, this is one of the last secrets of the universe. How does that infinite God embody as a finite human being? All the secrets of the universe, like the knowledge of Brahman, is revealed to you in the scriptures, of course. The knowledge of the soul, everything is revealed to you. But in this, the finer points are unrevealed. And it will take that highest knowledge in order to understand how the infinite God becomes an avatar. And the meaning of avatar is descent. How God descends. Descends from where? It's actually not somewhere up. It's from within, comes out. As it were, becomes embodied. So he's saying, Ajopi san avyayatma bhutanam ishvaropi san. The Lord is beyond birth and the Lord is beyond death, obviously. Otherwise, he would be subject to his own Maya. But he is the Lord of Maya. The whole of nature is nothing but his limiting adjunct. He controls his Maya. And he appears to be born. As I was saying, this is the greatest secret. How? And this can be understood only through the life of Sri Ramakrishna. And the whole of the gospel is nothing but an elaboration of this verse. So the next time you read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, read it with this in mind, that though that Supreme Being is unborn, undecaying, and the Lord of all beings, yet by subjugating Maya, the Lord appears to us in human form. Here, the moment we understand, there's something called the infinite, and then we take a kind of a measurement here. And the finite here, we have mentally taken these dimensions, and how can this become this? Or how can this be this? And this is Maya. Like I said, you will know all the details of the knowledge of Brahman, but you will never be able to know how God descends. Take for instance, one of the teachers of Sri Ramakrishna was Totapuri. He was a knower of Brahman. He sees Sri Ramakrishna. He doesn't recognize him as an incarnation of God. He's saying, oh, such a wonderful aspirant. Then he goes and says, will you learn Vedanta? Yeah, let me ask my mother, Divine Mother. So he goes to the temple, and Totapuri is like smirking, saying, oh, anyway, he'll lose all these delusive ideas about duality, about religious duality. He never recognizes them as an incarnation of God. Sri Ramakrishna says only 12 rishis, sages, they recognize Rama as a supreme being. The rest of the sages, they said, oh, we know that you are the son of Dasharatha, who was Rama's son. It's very difficult to understand an incarnation, even when you see. When we were young, we used to think, I wish I was born during Sri Ramakrishna's time. I would have been seeing him. Even after seeing him, we would not have recognized him. It takes a different insight. It takes that supreme knowledge to understand. And the Lord reveals himself to us. The Lord, when it takes an embodiment, behaves exactly like us. And yet there is something transcendent in that embodiment. The incarnation feels pain, goes through fatigue, eats, sleeps, does everything as a human being. Otherwise, we will not be able to relate to that incarnation, to that being. Yet, like within us, we know what the body is. It's kind of a stupid limitation. You don't eat for a couple of days and see what happens to your great body. You don't bathe for a couple of days and see what happens to your nice body. But there is an element of transcendence in the human frame. Something that transcends the ordinary limitations of the human body. There's something that rises up above the ordinary humanness that we have. Similarly, when we see when an incarnation does descend, we see the incarnation as a human being, but we see that there is a tremendous sense of transcendence. We see the power of knowledge that is manifested, the power of love and the power of yoga and the power of, you can see, compassion and love and kindness. It's simply not possible for a human being, even with the transcendence which we have, to exhibit such power of love and compassion. And we are drawn to that. And gradually, as we get closer and closer, we understand, oh my God, this is not an ordinary human being. This is not even an elevated human being. This has to be divine. And then we are caught up in the orbit of that God's love, and we are slowly drawn towards that being. And that being reveals itself to us. Take, for instance, when Sri Ramakrishna tells Swami Vivekananda, a couple of guys, his devotees, saying, these guys, they say that I am an incarnation of God. And Swami Vivekananda says, let 1,000 people say that you are an incarnation. I won't believe until and unless I have proof. Obviously, that's a kind of right stance. And later on, that same Swami Vivekananda is saying that he is the best of all the avatars, he is the greatest of avatars. He not only accepted him as an avatar, but said he was the greatest. And why? Because the power that the Lord had manifested as Ramakrishna was tremendous. And what power is that? The power of knowledge, which is dispelling our doubts and ignorance about him. So when the Lord descends, he appears like a human being. But as I say, he says, I am unborn. And we can see this phenomena from multiple angles. But suffice it to say that this should give us a kind of a mooring, a solid, you can say, ground where we can stand. Because if I keep on giving you arguments about how the infinite has become the finite according to the scriptures, you will not be able to appreciate the finer arguments. Because for us, the body has become real. And the same real body, when you go into a trance, the whole body seems immaterial, unreal, and a kind of a nuisance. The whole world appears as a kind of a dream. So what happened to that solid-looking nature? This solid-looking nature itself is a big illusion. There is no solid-looking nature at all. It appears as solid. But the whole thing is kind of a hollow. It's more like a kind of hologram, rather than that. Yes. It appears as with taste and sight and touch and sound and all these things. But where exactly is this? What are the experiences? A divine being will come and dismiss the whole thing as unreal. That which is real for us, for that person, it's unreal. You take your mind up a notch, a couple of notches up, and this world appears to you different from what you used to perceive it. And we have made such a big thing out of, this is my world. And this is so beautiful. And let's make this world a better place. And over, we don't recognize it as the Lord himself. So there's a kind of a veil that has come between us and the reality. One of the words that Swami Vivekananda uses to describe Sri Ramakrishna, which we say, knowledge divine, not flesh. every evening we chant these words. Swami Vivekananda uses Chid Ghanakai, the body made of condensed consciousness. And Sri Ramakrishna's body was that. What is conscious? Consciousness is beyond time and space and causation. Even time. What is time? Time molds everything. Space molds everything. And yet, time itself is an illusion. So it's a mix between real and illusion. What is time? Try to describe it. There are long treatises written on what is time. And yet we have not been able to define what is time. Like Stephen Hawking's Brief History of Time. Brief, really? Does time have a history? There we have. There we get into this self-contradictory, you can say, statements. All history is played out in time. So time itself has a kind of a dual nature, appearance and non-appearance. You cannot separate it from space, desha, kala. And what is space? Well, space, it was so small, they say. Really? And suddenly there was some fluctuation in that space and this whole thing expanded out of nothing. Well, not nothing. There's some kind of fluctuation, quantum fluctuation, they say. What are you trying to describe? And it's expanding, yeah, it's expanding, but it started from a small, you can say, a point, a small point. Is that space? So how do you describe space? How do you describe time? Well, it is like real and unreal. It's a mixture. It has a kind of a dual nature. At one side we see, oh, it is real, it is there. This is space. So what is space? Emptiness? No. Within this emptiness, all these forms emerge. And what are these forms? In a way, these forms are all empty space. The atom itself is a kind of an empty space. And this whole universe is nothing but a kind of a foam or a froth on the ocean of existence. What science says now. There's something called the dark matter and dark energy that contains more than 90%, comprises 90% of the universe, and this visible world of matter is only 5 or 6 or 7%, whatever. What happened? We do not know the universe. And in this non-knowledge is our great sense of importance. I know everything. We are just self-deluding ourselves. What will happen? The moment you keep on understanding through the spiritual aspect of consciousness, then you will be able to understand what this incarnation is. And very strangely, all the sciences and all the studies of human endeavors is actually trying to unravel what is consciousness. Yes, the physicists are trying to understand what is consciousness. And there are these biologists and the chemists and the psychologists and neurologists, all the ologists. They're trying to understand what is consciousness. They are understanding that's the basic framework of this universe. They understand that. That is good. But what is its nature? Its nature is limited. No. We say it is unlimited. And what is that called? We will call it Ishvara. That supreme omniscience, that ruler of all beings. So, though I am birthless, consciousness is birthless. Pure consciousness is without birth, without death, without decay, without diminution, without expansion. Consciousness is beyond all these 6 modifications. It's undecaying. It will not decay because it's not subject to something else. And that consciousness is the Lord of all things. That is, it's a substratum of everything. It is there within, it is there without. It is the life of everything from the blade of grass to the highest being. That is our Brahma Stambha Pariyanta. This is what is. Everything is strung up within this consciousness. Can we understand consciousness? Yes. We can understand consciousness through this consciousness that we have. That is why we can understand God, which is consciousness, through consciousness, which is an individual consciousness. And as yesterday we were saying, when pure water poured into pure water becomes nothing but pure water. Yatodakam shuddhe shuddham asiktam tadrigeva bhavati. It is through this consciousness that we can understand that whole. Of course, Girish Ghosh will say that Swami Vivekananda is saying, how can you have an infinite and call it parts and whole? There is no parts and whole. Sri Ramakrishna says, what's the incarnation? It's like a stick thrown on the waters and apparently divides the waters into this and that. A stick cannot divide the waters, obviously. At times he has said, the incarnation is like what? A big hole in the wall. You can see the vast meadow on the other side because there's a hole in that wall. You can see this side and you can see the incarnation stands midway. It is through the incarnation that we can see the infinite. To see an incarnation, Sri Ramakrishna says, is to see God. It is only incarnation can rise up to the level of samadhi and come down over and over. Why? In order to lead us up to that state. There is also he, in this case Ramakrishna, of course, as the being who stands on the threshold of the infinite and the apparently finite. The technical word is bhavamukha. He stands between the noumenon and the phenomenon, the infinite and the finite. That is the place. So to see Sri Ramakrishna, to understand Ramakrishna, is to understand both the finite and the infinite. It is that Ramakrishna who was told by the Divine Mother 3 times, Bhavamukhe thak, stay in the state of Bhavamukha. And this is the tremendous state where in that state, as Swami Sharadananda discusses this phenomena of Bhavamukha, or standing on the threshold between the finite and the infinite, he's saying, in that state, that being is identified with the whole of nature. And at the same time, that being identifies itself with the infinite. And the incarnation feels, yes, I am identified with this, like you are identified with your body. Suppose somebody comes and pinches my pinky. I will yell, ah. But if I withdraw my mind, I will not yell. We are identified completely with this body, the consciousness. So, the incarnation appears as a human being, but in reality, that God is identified with the whole of creation. The whole of creation is God's body. And from that, according to Sri Ramakrishna says, Divine Mother, like she as it were, sends a officer in a place where there's a little trouble to quell that trouble. So the incarnation goes to that particular place to quell some of that troublesome part in the universe. So this consciousness, which we call Ishvara, which is called God. We are using this term Ishvara because there are things like nature and being involved. But that consciousness is supreme consciousness called Brahman. From a slightly lower plane of existence, it is called Ishvara. So it is Ishvara, is all this consciousness that now appears as a human being. When we see a mirage, what do we see? We don't immediately notice that it's a mirage. It's water. And when we go closer to it, then we say, oh, it's a mirage. One day, as we proceed towards this incarnation, the mirage of limitedness, of finite body, and the needs of the body which appear in the incarnation vanish, and we will see that as supreme consciousness, as Ishvara. So, but we need to proceed or approach that mirage. You need to feel that you need to quench your thirst. If you are thirsty, you will go towards that mirage and it will disappear and you will understand, oh, it's a mirage. So when there's a need for us to know this consciousness, we will approach an incarnation. And as we approach that incarnation will disappear and appear as the infinite consciousness. So that's the reason why all the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, in their mature years, they were simply astounded, saying, we thought we knew Sri Ramakrishna, we don't know. He is that Brahman, Tumi Brahma Ramakrishna, Tumi Vishnu, Tumi Ram. It's the phenomena of, you can say, the infinite appearing as a finite comes through a kind of a limitation. That limitation is non-existent. And once we understand this, we will understand ourselves, because the incarnation comes to address that very, you can say, conundrum within us. Are we a mixture of infinite and finite? Yes. We are both a mixture of the finite and the infinite. As consciousness, it's infinite. But that consciousness is appearing as a limited body and mind and senses, and my life and my loves and my meaning. When we take our stand on consciousness, everything else disappears. Everything appears as a kind of illusion. Everything appears as a mirage. We spoke about a hologram. Within this, what's a hologram? You take one small part of the hologram and you see the whole of it. So in this, you are a hologram of the infinite, as it were. And the whole of the infinite appears here. And only when we are getting closer and closer to our source, our consciousness, it is then we can understand the secrets or the final secrets of an incarnation. How, when the Lord says, though I am birthless, undecaying by nature, and the Lord of beings, yet by subjugating my prakriti, my subjugating my maya, I come by my own powers of maya. Then we will be able to understand that this is nothing but that supreme consciousness. We stop here for today. This topic is vast. It is actually the basis of all our search. It is the basis of all our scriptures. It's the basis of our lives, of all our spiritual practices, all our love and devotion and everything. The topic is unending. We hope by our inner visions we can understand an incarnation. But before we can understand an incarnation, we will be able to first understand ourselves. And only then we will be able to understand an incarnation. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu.